Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard what this evening is all about, to launch a series of discussions under the title Metamorphoses. And to do this, we have the privilege of having in our midst Professor Benkler, who is associated earlier with the Yale and now with the Harvard Law School, a very eminent jurist. He will be speaking to us this evening to what I believe to generally educate us in a brief while about the connectivity between the entire process of digitization and the transformation which is taking place in various arenas of human activity. Technology, needless to say, has made enormous strides in the recent decades. And in our own country, irrespective of literacy and poverty levels, we have a very pleasing prospect, real terms, of people at virtually the bottom of the economic ladder possessing a cell phone and therefore being empowered to communicate with their families. I work in the northern part, the northernmost part of the country, and large parts of where I work are difficult mountain areas which have still to see electricity, still to see potable drinking water, still to see round-the-year road systems, but very interestingly, there are mobile towers, makeshift towers, transmission, and a very large percentage of the local rural population carry a cell phone in their pocket, and they are able to communicate with their relatives and others with whom they have to deal with. And over the past several years that I have been there, I have seen very significant upgradation of technology in this mobile telephony. So this is one very, very quick example of what communication technology revolution has done to us. On the information side, we have experts here this evening, and you'll be hearing more from them with their enormous knowledge and experience. All I will say is that IIC, along with the Center for Policy Research, along with the NITI Aayog, has the privilege of hosting a series of discussions, exchanges on this very important subject. And to begin this entire series, to launch it, we will this evening have the privilege of hearing Professor Benkler. Thank you very much.
Professor Benkler, Mr. Vora, Mr. Shamsaran, Yamini, Mr. Varma, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first compliment IIC for organizing Metamorphoses, and we in NITI Aayog are particularly delighted to partner IIC for just making, it's a unique attempt at getting very distinguished speakers to make people understand technology in a very simple manner. And it's critical because traditional and the manufacturing sector and service sectors are all getting disrupted in a manner which the world has never seen before. And actually this fourth industrial revolution is today being driven by technologies that are transforming both mankind and the process of production in several ways. Autonomous robots, simulation, big data, analytics, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, additive manufacturing. This is all having huge impact across the value chain from design to productivity, speed and quality of production. And actually there's very widespread concern over the potential impact of these technologies on employment. And a vast range of jobs are actually at the risk of extinction, and rapid scaling could lead to accumulation of job losses. And the other fear is that new technologies would lead to increase in inequalities and lack of social cohesion. Even a person like Elon Musk has stated that artificial intelligence represents an essential threat to humanity and has suggested very tight regulations. And Bill Gates has said that robots need to be taxed to compensate for greater efficiency compared to humans, and suggested that the pace of automation should actually be slowed down. But the march of technology is inevitable, and if you were to look at other reports, latest being the McKinsey report, which estimates that close to about 800 million people around the globe would be displaced by automation, and will need to find new jobs by 2030. While people will lose jobs, there will be huge opportunities for new kinds of jobs, and there will be huge opportunities for higher paid and higher skilled jobs. And I think it's important to understand that we in India, we are bigger than 24 countries of Europe. We are passing through a window of demographic transition, which rarely happens in history. 70% of our population is below the age of 32. And for us, while this is an age of disruption, this is also the age of transformation. And it is also the age of productivity and growth. And to my mind, this is an age where India is seeing a completely new ecosystem of startups. We're seeing a vast number of disruptions across several sectors. We are the only country in the world with 1 billion biometric. We are the only country with 1 billion bank accounts. We're the only country with 1 billion smartphones. These are driving digital transactions through mobiles at an unprecedented pace. And to my mind, in about 5 to 6 years' time, and I was giving this example that a decade back I was working in the fisheries sector of Kerala, and we were trying to open bank accounts for traditional fishermen. It used to take 10 months, 11 months. Knowing your customer was a nightmare. Today, you walk into a bank account, you walk into a bank branch, handheld device, use your biometric, your bank account you'll have in 1 minute flat. And therefore, there's been a huge paradigm shift. And to my mind, India will be the first country which will actually make, in the next 4 to 5 years, with 1 billion mobile, we'll make physical banks, debit cards, credit cards, all this technologically redundant. And it's important to understand this, that the kind of transformation India will make. But I think it's important also to understand what does India need to do to push this age of disruption and transformation forward. And one of the things we are doing in NITI Aayog is really to open a vast number of tinkering labs. We've opened close to 3,000 tinkering labs. And in the next 4 to 5 years, we'll be doing 30,000 tinkering labs across Indian schools, where students from class 6 onwards will be will be playing around with robots, 3D printers, additive manufacturing, all this from class 6 onwards. And to my mind, this will be one of the biggest disruptions which Indian education has seen. So it's very important to understand that the march of technology is inevitable. India must embrace this technology, and India must actually make a quantum jump. But for all that to happen, it's very important that technology is made simple, it's made easy, and we get people like Professor Benkler to put it in and put it in a language which all of us can comprehend and understand, and enable the march of technology forward. I would also like to say that technology makes government far more efficient. It makes, just look at the direct benefit transfer scheme. It's enabled India to push close to 487 schemes through the direct benefit transfer. It's enabled government to save close to 83,000 crores. Look at income tax. 99% of the people have paid online this year. Look at the public finance management system. Everything today, government transfers on the PFMS system using digital technology ensures just-in-time payment. All government payments are actually just-in-time today. So across sectors and GST. And all this will throw a lot of data. So unlike America, where Google and Facebook own the data, unlike China, where Tencent and Alibaba own the data. In India, data is owned by Aadhaar, it's owned by UPI, Unified Payment Interface System, which is owned by the bank. You'll have GST owning our data. But that throws up its own challenges. And how do we use this data to allow a lot of academicians, a lot of researchers to do research, and how do we allow private sector to do a lot of innovation on top of that? For example, on UPI, Google has used that UPI framework to do Google Tej. We did BHIM from government, Bharat Interface for Money, but Google came in, did Google Tej, walked away with 70% of the market. And then WhatsApp came in and walked away with another 40% of the market. So you'll have a lot of private sector innovation on the top of this. So all these are challenges. Data, how do we open it up for academicians? How do we open it up for research? How do we allow private sector to do innovation? And these are some of the issues I think Professor Benkler will talk about. So we look forward, we are very excited to partner IISc in this very unique initiative, and we look forward to a very fascinating talk by Professor Benkler. Thank you very much, ladies.
Mr. Vora, Air Marshal Mr. Verma, Mr. Kant, Ambassador Saran, and Professor Benkler, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Center for Policy Research, it is a real privilege for me to welcome you all to this launch of Metamorphoses in association with the IIC and the NITI Aayog. At the Center for Policy Research, our core mandate is to try and bring some amount of intellectual order, or certainly some amount of intellectual engagement, to some of the most contentious issues of our time. And there couldn't be an issue that is more empowering and contentious at the same time as technology that has entered every aspect of our everyday lives. Just last week, I was at a meeting on fiscal transparency and budgets, accountability, and democracy. And we imagined a world where, as Mr. Kant was talking about before, the public finance management systems, thanks to technology, could give the average citizen the most disaggregated data on what the government is spending on their school, their health center, their water pipes, the government toilets, and so on. What could be more empowering than having that kind of information on your fingertips in a way that could really get democracy down to the grassroots in a way that is completely different to anything that we know before, that we have known before. But even as we celebrated that, we had many questions and many moments of caution in our minds. After all, as empowering as it is to have information on our fingertips, it also fundamentally alters our relationships with the world in ways that are completely unimaginable. It has fundamentally altered how we interact with each other. I spend more time with my family WhatsApping them and SMSing them than I do talking to them. I'm sure that's transformed and will be even more complex for my children and the world as it moves on. It changes completely how we interact with the private sector, how we interact with markets. I willingly give my data to almost every large corporation out there because it is more effective and more convenient for me. But I do wonder what Amazon might do after they discover how many times I have bought various goods of it, and what Google will do when it very conveniently gives me an advertisement to book my next holiday home. It knows everything. It makes my life very convenient. I willingly participate. But there is a question of what norms business and market should put in place as citizens and individuals willingly begin to engage with it in a way that is completely different to anything that we've ever known. As empowering as data is to our experiencing the state, to our experiencing democracy, it also throws up very, very important concerns and contentious questions about the nature of the social contract. The state comes closer to you thanks to data, but it also in many ways goes further away because you're now dealing with technology, not an individual. The change of a human being can significantly help reduce corruption, potentially, but it also takes a human being away. How does one then address some of the very tactile aspects of the relationship that citizens have with the state, especially when it comes to accessing basic services? What about questions of exclusion? What about the complex issue of privacy? None of these are issues that are easily resolved. None of these are issues that can certainly be resolved in a polarized debate. This requires deep, effective, continuous and rigorous engagement. And it is in that spirit that we have participated in this really very important exercise. And it couldn't be more fitting that Professor Benkler will give the inaugural lecture to help us unpack some of these very, very contentious issues. This is a moment of great empowerment and a moment of some caution. How do we move forward? Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Amitabh Kant, my colleague from NITI Aayog, Yamini, again also a colleague from the Center for Policy Research, Mr. Air Marshal Verma, Director of the IIC, and of course our very distinguished speaker for the evening, Professor Benkler of Harvard University. Welcome to Metamorphoses. This is a very unique initiative, which is a joint initiative of the India International Center of Center for Policy Research, and very importantly, of NITI Aayog. And I must thank my colleague Amitabh Kant for lending his very, very valuable support to this initiative. Let me tell you how this initiative came about. I think it is very apparent also from what you have heard from both Yamini and from Amitabh just now, that technological advancement has created immense opportunities, disruptive as it is, but the opportunities that it has actually created for humanity are also perhaps unprecedented in scale and in scope. At the same time, there are downsides to this technological advancement, and the very rapidity of change and the very scale of transformation which is taking place is perhaps leaving behind human understanding of this change that is happening. I think never before in history has the gap between technology which we are using all the time, whether it is a smartphone or the internet, while we use that, and we can't do without this new technology, our understanding of that technology, how it works, what its impact is in terms of society, what is the impact on the human psyche, these are issues which perhaps are very, very poorly understood. So one of the, and for example, even with respect to the jargon, we talk about algorithms, we talk about bots, we talk about social media, we talk about machine learning, we talk about big data. While we use these terms, what really lies behind these terms? What is their real meaning? This is something which, in fact, most of us are quite illiterate about. So this exercise was also a means of trying to begin the process of educating ourselves about this new digital world. And how this impacts on us. Impacts on us not just negatively, but impacts on us also in terms of the opportunities that it creates for us. I think there are both sides of the issue. But the fact that there is that impact on human psychology, there is that impact on society. There are issues like, for example, data privacy that Yamini mentioned. There are aspects of great opportunities that Amitabh spoke about. I think we have to really look at this in a much more balanced way. And this is what this whole series of talks is trying to achieve. My favorite cartoon is of a couple going to a marriage counselor. And they are sitting in front of the marriage counselor, and the marriage counselor asks, so when did this problem start? And both the husband and wife say, well, actually, it started exactly at the time when both of us lost our smartphones. They were taken away from us, meaning thereby that since then, we actually had to start talking to each other again. And that was a very, very strange experience. So I think there are these kind of issues that have arisen in terms of, as I said, the impact on human psyche, the impact on our society, and it should come as no surprise, the impact on political dispensations. What does it mean, for example, of what has happened with respect to the use of, Facebook data in the United States, and what may happen here in India as well. So there are very, very major, weighty issues that need to be, as Yamini said, unpacked. And I think this is what we will try to do through these series of talks. I would like to, before I conclude, like to mention that really this initiative started with the imagination of a group of very young people. We had Richa Bansal, Dhruv Arora, Priyanka Shah from Center for Policy Research. Yamini's very outstanding organization. We had also Arun Das and Apar Gupta, who helped in terms of designing this whole series of talks. In NITI Aayog, two very bright youngsters, Puneet Shukla, Alek Saran. And I would also like to pay tribute to Premila Ghosh, Tete, and Portia Conrad from our own program division, who actually helped us put all this together. This would not have been possible but for the teamwork that we had from these individuals. And finally, I would like to express my very, very grateful thanks to Professor Benkler, who was kind enough to accept our invitation to come and launch these series. And Professor Benkler has already had some very, very interesting interactions at NITI Aayog itself this afternoon. Yesterday, he had extended sessions at the IIT Delhi. He will soon be going to Bangalore and interacting with people there. For us, this has been a very educative experience, interacting with him. And I hope this association, Professor, will continue beyond this particular event. But now we are all very eager to hear your presentation this evening. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for coming in such large numbers. Thank you.